Hello and welcome to the Marketing Dribble podcast. Myself, Rob Boyle, and my co-host, Johnny Kenyon. Hiya, Johnny. How are you?
All right, thanks, Rob. A little bit tired this morning. How are you?
Oh, and you're tired. Why is that? Someone tells me you maybe a stag was happening this weekend. Would you like to
Yeah, my
elaborate?
stag do this weekend. So a little bit tired, but you know that I love marketing, love PPC, so I couldn't resist this one. I was gonna maybe take the day off, but I'm up for this. Well up for this actually. So how you doing, Rob? Any real tiny small talk? We can't really small talk, can we?
No real small talk. I must admit, you're fresher than I thought you'd be. But yeah, you seem okay. So it can't be in that wild, or maybe you've just got a great recovery. I don't know. But anyway, no.
And you're obviously looking fresh because you didn't bother coming along, even though you're invited. But we won't get into it here. And why can't we get into it, Rob?
Because I don't like whitewater rafting and jumping off cliffs into water. That's why. But we can't because we've got a special guest. And who's the guest today?
So, this week we've got Sophie Fell, and Sophie is one of our open mic nights, which is the podcast episodes which we've put aside especially for first-time podcasters. So, Sophie, welcome on to your first ever podcast. How are you feeling?
Thank you. I'm a bit nervous, but we'll be okay. We'll get through it. Thank you both for having me. I'm very excited too.
No worries.
Yeah.
So, I'll do a bit of an intro. This is just stuff I've scraped off the internet. And I'll give you a chance to correct me. I did get one wrong last week, actually. So, yeah, and then we'll just get into the questions. So, Sophie has a decade of experience in PPC, in which time she's managed over £200 million of ad spend across a diverse array of businesses, from solo entrepreneurs to globally recognised household names. Currently the director of paid media for Two Trees PPC, with some pretty juicy clients like Juicy Couture, LinkedIn, National Trust, View, etc. Not only that, but Sophie's been writing PPC articles now for several years, published 2 books on Amazon with breakdowns and guides to Google Ads. What an intro. It's a surprise you've not been on a podcast before. It sounds like you've got loads to share.
I know. Can I just say, I'll just jump in. When I read this, 200 million in ads, that's just I don't think in my whole life I've ever got even close to anything near. That's ridiculous.
None of it was my money, if that helps. Yeah. Not $1 of it was my money.
Rob's business only trusts him with the odd tenner here and there, basically, and that's just to get coffee, isn't it? So
that's true.
You can dream, mate. Sophie, anything I missed? Is that a good summary?
No, that's a good summary. I feel like I'm feeling imposter syndrome right now, but it's all true.
Don't. Honestly, me and Rob are pure imposters, so you're in good company if you do feel like that. But yeah, let's get stuck in. Question 1, before we get into the really tech questions, the actionable insights, where do you think businesses go wrong at sort of like a top level with PPC and paid search, when they're first starting out in this kind of thing?
Yeah, I think there's a few things, honestly. I think the first thing is that like PPC has a very low barrier to entry. So anyone can do it. I think half of that is the platforms themselves making it so easy to create your own ads. So, business owners will do it, or someone that's never, done Google Ads before will do it. So I think that's one thing that the industry as a whole struggles with, and the reputation of PPC as a whole has kind of suffered because of that, honestly, because people struggle to find sort of the right people, the right person to kind of manage their ads. So I think that's one part of it. I think the other part is that marketing has evolved so much in the last 10 years. I think a marketing manager in 2014 would be someone that's, really brand focused, very kind of traditional marketing. I think today in kind of 2024, we're expecting so much more of even entry level roles now. I think we've all seen those job descriptions where they talk about, you need to know like PR and SEO and PPC and website development and events management and all these things. And then at the same time, we're seeing, really low salaries for those sorts of roles as well. So I think probably marketing as a whole is kind of struggling because of this. So I was actually speaking to a recruiter friend the other day who mentioned that last year they had a massive uplift in people looking for junior contractors. So they were willing to pay kind of lower contracting rates for people with 1 or 2 years of experience. So I think we're really seeing businesses prioritize like cost over experience and expertise these days, which I think, we're kind of struggling as an industry with all those things at the moment, honestly.
Yeah,
and go
on, Rob.
No, I can say you would think it's kind of the backwards way, because you think if you hire someone with experience, you'll get better results from your ads, which actually cost more cost effective in the long run than someone. But they just see that first cost, don't they? Not the bigger picture. Sorry.
We might get into this later, but like the cost of PPC is increasing, so it's like, let's pay someone less to get good results with these crazy click prices. Like it's not going to end well. I've gone into so many businesses where they've tried to do it themselves, and it's just a mess, And it doesn't help where they get given a Google representative who'll just tell them all the wrong things to do. They're just kind of. I almost, when I go into a new role, I say it's like being a chef, but I'm not just walking into the kitchen. The ingredients are laid out and I can get going. Like, I'm having to wash up the mess that they've left first as well. So 100% agree with you on that, and that really hits home for me.
And I think that really nicely kind of leads to the next question. And I think it's from, sometimes you may pick them up from brand side. It's like, when you come to new accounts and you see them for the first time, what sort of red flags kind of jump out at you as issues? You must have this sort of like, I don't know, there's a tick box, or you just they just jump out and see it. I don't know what sort of things is kind of like people doing wrong.
Yeah, no, it is pretty much a tick box at this point, honestly. So there's like two things I look at when I am introduced to a new account. The main metric, which I'll probably speak a lot about on this podcast, is click-through rate, or CTR. Just because it's so indicative of so many things. So it's like, are the keywords and ad copy relevant? Is the landing page relevant? Are the keywords matching the search intent of the user and things like that? So I think CTR is so indicative of how well a campaign or an account is performing, that's always my go-to check there. So this year, the latest benchmarks for CTR are around 6% on Google Ads and around 3% on Microsoft Ads. Obviously, it's kind of industry dependent as well, but that's kind of the general benchmarks I used as well to see, is this performing well? Is it underperforming? And then you can kind of dig in, beyond that into, okay, is it the keywords? Is it the ad copy? I think the other major red flag, which is really not anyone's fault, but I think on Google Ads particularly, we see that the default settings such as location and language, so the location, for example, is as default set to presence or interest, so people that are interested in a location. And because it's the default and it's really hidden when you create a campaign, people don't check it and people may not know the difference. So that's a really big one, which can actually cause complete havoc for campaigns, honestly. And the other default setting on Google Ads, which actually Microsoft Ads doesn't have, is the languages, and it'll just set it to all languages. So, your ads are normally written in one language. So because of those two things, you can end up with, really low quality traffic, or you're getting lots of clicks, but they're not doing anything, or you're getting tons of impressions, but no clicks. So the main two things I would say are the red flags are, CTRs, because they're so indicative, and the campaign settings. That's normally one of the two sources of issues for an underperforming account.
Very interesting. So aside from those two really obvious red flags, like what's the next step then? So like, what does an account review look like, and like where should people be checking, I guess, in their own account if they want to do that? Is it as simple as you can have a generic one-stop shop kind of thing?
So I think in most cases you can sort of go through a bit of a tick list. So I think after kind of click-through rate and those default campaign settings, I know we all joke about Google Reps and the recommendations tab and things like that, but the Google recommendations tab in particular is a really, really good source of information, just because it has everything in one place. So, repairs or fixes, things that are missing on your accounts. You can get insights on trending search queries that you might not have, if conversion tracking's broken, all those sorts of things. So I don't recommend auto-applying or going through and just applying all the recommendations that Google gives you, because that's no good either. But definitely reading what the recommendations are and having a look at that pretty regularly is a really good kind of next stop, I would say. I guess in terms of kind of a tick list, if you're lucky enough to have conversion tracking that works, and it has those lighter conversion events as well. Again, that's a really, really great indicator of, again, traffic quality, how well your website's working with your ads and things like that too. So I think if you have conversion tracking in place and it's a comprehensive conversion tracking, I think that's another place to look at as well, for sure.
Yeah, I think conversion tracking, I think, is a big thing that people really, and it's interesting you mentioned that, people struggle with, isn't it? Getting the right conversions, and then the GA4, and then that's not tallying up with what Google Ads are saying, and there's this kind of like disparity between the two, and then they go to Shopify and that says something different, and they don't know where they're looking at. I don't know if you come across those sort of situations where just the three metrics are just not in line, and you just got to, I suppose, do you use revenue? I suppose the next question is, do you kind of use revenue as a metric there, and kind of that ROAS thing, return on ad spend? Or are you, as you mentioned earlier, saying no, they're okay, but click-through rate's something that I would use more as a metric?
Yeah, I think ROAS is important, but I think some of those metrics are only as important as kind of the emphasis we place on them, if that makes sense. So I think, again, whatever industry or budget or kind of the size of your account, I think CTR is kind of a universal metric of, good or not so good performance. Again, without conversion tracking, which again is something that so many people struggle with, it's so hard to prove ROAS. And like you said, with all the different platforms reporting something completely different, you kind of have to pick a single source of truth that you trust, and kind of go with that. But that then sort of means when you're reporting that there's caveats, right? Because you're like, sometimes you end up reporting all three, and you'll say, here's what GA4 says, here's what Google Ads says, here's what Shopify says, and then you've kind of got to figure it out between them. So I think ROAS is important, but I think that kind of CTR and conversion rates are a better indicator of like the health of an account generally, than focusing too much on ROAS or direct ROI.
Yeah, and you sort of mentioned those like micro conversions earlier on as well, so you can sort of see what people are doing from your PPC accounts and where they're coming back. I know a lot of people have now moved away from the last click attribution as well, so it's kind of like, especially with the cost of clicks going up and just marketing being so expensive, and obviously people trying to reduce their headcount, I think that overall picture does become a lot more important to a business, and kind of that blended return. And this is how PPC has impacted all these other channels. So I think, yeah, really, really good advice there.
Yeah, I was gonna add something to that, but then I think it's probably covered in Johnny's next question.
Stick to the questions, Rob. Don't grill it too much. It's their first time.
I do have a habit of kind of.
But it does lead nicely on to the next question.
Yeah,
your metrics question. So.
Yeah. So you on question 5, Johnny? Now.
Oh, you skipped it. All right.
No,
well,
I did it with the metrics. Yeah, kind of.
It was basically just like, are there any other metrics people should focus on? But
I don't know.
Specific,
I suppose. This is a fluid conversation, isn't it? So let's just do it. Stick to the questions. That's trying to go off piece, as I always.
We're the amateurs on this one, hey. So.
Yeah. Well, I suppose at the back of that is how do you measure the performance? And what's the frequency is part of kind of the question.
Any metrics we've missed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're just going. Sorry. Who's the amateurs now? It's definitely us two. We need to be on more podcasts ourselves. Go on, sorry.
Right. Work mode. Okay. So I think generally, I would suggest looking at your accounts twice a week. It doesn't mean you need to make changes twice a week, and definitely don't make changes for the sake of making changes. But I do think, twice a week's a pretty good indicator of how things are going. So again, for kind of a whistle-stop tour, I tend to look at CTR. I'll look at ad strengths as well, because although sort of us as humans and Google may disagree on what makes a good ad, ultimately it is kind of the ad strength that Google or Microsoft give you that will kind of contribute to your ad rank and things like that too. So if you are going through and sort of adding new keywords or trending search queries, it's really important that you keep your ads as relevant as possible to those new queries. So ad strength's another really important one. I would say, outside of metrics, looking at kind of recent search queries, looking at, your budgets, and again, that conversion data is really important too. So I think if you can focus on those handful of things as like a whistle-stop as a whistle-stop tour. That will give you kind of a really good indicator of how the account's performing and will allow you to keep on top of things. So I'd suggest twice a week looking at those things, and then maybe reviewing ad strengths, once every 2 weeks, once every month or so. You don't need to do it every day, but just to keep on top of that too.
Cool. Yeah. And what's the optimization score, which is the recommendations for when the recommendations score, and you get bosses looking, going, well, it's 75%. It was 100 last week. You're not doing your job, and he's like, no, it's just a recommendation. But I presume if you have clients, it's something you just go in and make sure it looks 100. So if they're looking over the account, in fact, do your clients look over the accounts, or do they just leave it all to you?
It's so off-piste, Rob.
I know, but it's quite it's personal to me. I'm kind of really interested in it, so I'm kind of thinking just a quick. If you allow me this one quick sort of.
It's pay her. Get Sophie to do your accounts, eh?
Just there. Is it okay? There you go. Do your accounts. Just let me know. Just let me know when it performs, and we'll meet again in a month.
Sure.
Yeah.
So generally, at our agency, we're very at Two Trees. We're very hot on transparency, so all our clients do actually have access to their own accounts to look at, which is really important. Generally they don't look at the recommendations tab, but sometimes they'll get emails of the recommendations, which they'll kind of ask us about too. I think generally if you keep on top of it and you're doing those checks once or twice a week, you normally won't have any problems with your optimization score. I know I'm not supposed to say this, but you can dismiss things that aren't relevant, and that will kind of help your Opti score too. I think one thing to bear in mind is that agencies, in particular, like Google partners, Google Premier partners, are really tied to those Opti scores. They have to be above 70% almost at all times. So it is important to keep on top of it. But again, if you're not keeping on top of it, you may be missing out on things that are broken, or trending search queries and things like that too. So I think either way, you should check your recommendations tab and kind of keep on top of your Opti score. Yeah.
No,
cool.
No, it's good. No, good. Yeah, good answer.
So Rob, get your pen and paper out for this one. Sounds like you're probably going to need it. So how can someone manage expectations for underperforming accounts? Like, what if you're sat there and maybe the board sees PPC as a losing game and they're not willing to invest anymore? Like, how do you keep them on board?
Yeah, so I think honestly, outside of the technical kind of hands-on stuff, stakeholder engagement and management is like a huge part of all our jobs, whether we're marketing managers or we work at an agency or whatever we do. It's a huge part of it that not everyone has. I think the problem with like underperforming accounts, or when stakeholders are kind of looking at the metrics, is that often PPC is pitched to them internally or by an agency as a really quick win. So they're like, let's put $1,000 in, let's see what happens, you'll get results instantly. And I think a lot of board members and stakeholders don't always have the patience for like SEO, which they'll see as more of a long-term strategy over 12, 18, 24 months. So I think PPC gets pitched in the wrong way, which then you're making a rod for your own back by doing that as well. So I think what's really great about PPC, and something I'm really big on, is forecasting ahead of time. So for example, in all our pitches and all the pitches I've ever done, there's always been a forecast of 3, 6, 12 months of activity, seasonality, and what that looks like as well. So I think if you can educate the stakeholders as part of that too, and just really show them that you're in control, then you're less likely to come up on those issues where they say or they perceive that your accounts are underperforming, because PPC can be a money pit sometimes. So I think that's kind of the main thing. I think stakeholder management is really key. I think forecasting ahead of time is really, really key, because if you are going to have those peaks and troughs, you can sort of warn them ahead of time. And I think, just making sure you're educating them and bringing them along the journey with you, I think is really important as well.
Oh, great. And I'm going to stick to script. I'm not going off. I could go down a rabbit hole asking questions on forecasting, but I promise I'm not going to do that. We have to get you back on so I can do more on that, because it's quite interesting questions. But what I'm really interested to know with someone from your kind of your background and writing books and all this sort of thing you've got is, can you give us some advanced tips now to take your PPC account to the next level? And I've got my pen ready on this one.
Definitely. So I think a really big thing in PPC that people assume you can't do is kind of personalization, because, you know, you've got an ad group with one ad and that's kind of it. But there are a lot of things you can do to really personalize your ads and almost make them unique to every user, kind of at whatever point in their like shopping journey they're in. So I think, for example, you know, Google and Microsoft both have a really wide range of audiences that you can use, which you should definitely leverage. So obviously you can import your own CRM data, but you can use affinity audiences, in-market audiences. You know, there are so many audiences, you know, demographics, there's all sorts of stuff that you can utilize. And having that information means you can really personalize your ads to each of these people. So, for example, if you've got, you know, abandoned cart as one of your audiences, maybe you can, you know, create ads for that particular ad group, that particular audience, and talk about, you know, welcome back and give them a discount, encourage them to kind of check out. So I think as part of that, there's RLSAs as well, so remarketing lists for search ads too, which I think are criminally underutilized in 2024. They've been there a very long time, and we as an industry have kind of moved away from using them. But I think they're, you know, they're like a gold mine for customer data and things you can use, and again, kind of creating that personalized experience for people that are coming back to your website for a second or third or fourth time before converting. So yeah, I think another really great personalization tool to utilize is dynamic keyword insertion as well. So you can use that either in your ad headlines or ad descriptions. And what it does is matches the user's search query. So, you know, whatever they type in will kind of appear as like the top headline or within your ad description. So again, that makes your ad copy really, really tailored to what the user's looking for as well. So you can almost create kind of a unique ad for each individual user, which you kind of assume you can't do with PPC. But I think that's a really great tip that a lot of people don't use.
No, I love that, and there's a couple of things when I used to do this in the past, I don't do it so much now, but that dynamic, you know, with the squiggly things, and you don't see that a lot of people using that anymore, and you know, the remarketing list as well. Yeah, I think people sometimes forget the kind of the obvious things of like, they've been to this website, they've done this, taken this action, you know. Go back to them. I mean, you always think of it when you're done like, in newsletters and things, that's part of the kind of thing, but you sometimes, whether PMax and all those sorts of ads are just taken that away and people just throw some keywords in and just some images in, some image assets, and off you go, and I kind of think, you wonder whether it's gone a little bit that way. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's not a question.
Yeah, totally, and obviously, like, you can. It doesn't have to just be the ads personalized. It can be the landing pages if you know what people have been on before. Like you say, they're welcome back when they land on the website. You can really, really tailor things. That dynamic keyword insertion thing is interesting. Probably shouldn't admit this, but I didn't really know about that, so I'm going to go away and check that out after this. So yeah, already got my little golden nugget there. So pretty good. So. Probably a question that I'll be interested in. How do you stay up to date? Obviously, you know, paid search PPC is changing all the time. How do you keep up with these kind of insights that you've been giving us?
So I think there's a few things, and what I'm about to say might be a little bit controversial, so I apologise. Okay. But I think as people rise the ranks, you obviously sort of delegate more and strategize more, which as you should, right? But I do think, and for me personally, being in the accounts is kind of a non-negotiable for me. So I had a period last year for about 6 months where I was a strategy director for paid media. And it was at the time demand gen came out. And because I wasn't in the accounts anymore, I just had no idea. And I got put on the spot about it in a client meeting. They were like, oh, well, you know, what's demand gen? And I was like, I don't know. And I didn't know. So that's something that's like a really big non-negotiable for me, is just being in the accounts. I think that's the best way to stay up to date. Again, we're really lucky with kind of Google and Microsoft that they put on so many trainings for us to attend, webinars, in-person events and things like that. And that, again, like Google Marketing Live, for example, the really best way to keep on top of, you know, what's happening, what's coming up and what's going on. I think, although it's tedious, I am a big advocate for Google Skills Shop and the Google exams. Again, I think maybe 10 years ago or so, it was the same content every year and it was a bit tedious doing the exams. But today, they really do update the content every single year. And I think that's just a must-have. I really think it should be a must-have for anyone that's working in paid media, whether you're in kind of sales or, account management, just to understand the basics of kind of what's going on in the accounts. So yeah, I would say overall, training, webinars, your Skillshop exams or your Microsoft exams are a must have, because I think ultimately, if you don't have those insights, you can't stay ahead of the competition. You can't continue to create really great ads. So you have to kind of be a lifelong learner and really commit yourself to it if you're going to be in paid media.
I think, you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, it's probably why the exams only last a year, because it forces you to go back and do them, doesn't it? But, and it's really interesting, and myself and Johnny do this, we're kind of like strategists, but we're in the weeds as well, because, like you said, if you have a few months off, it moves so fast at the moment that you just, like you say, being caught up with something that you should really know. But if you're not actually doing it, things move on and things come in, and it's incredible, yeah. There you go. I thought Johnny was going to say something then, sorry. I just paused.
No, I'm just sitting here absorbing all. Yeah, it's great.
No, doing all. He's working out he's just googling how to do dynamic ad insertion.
Yeah.
So this leads us quite nicely on to the last question, and I'll go on to my golden nugget question here. So, what is the future of PPC, and what should people be prepared for, look out for?
Yeah, so I think, without sounding doom and gloom, I do think that we are going to see reductions in that kind of human input. I don't think that AI is going to take over all our jobs, but I do think in paid media our jobs will really evolve. So from that kind of hands-on, making the changes ourselves, to more of a role of like steering the AI. I think that's kind of where we're heading in the next few years. I will say, as part of that, I think paid media is going to continue to rely on data a lot more. So I think, again, for us people in paid media, we're going to shift away from so much input, but I think we're going to have to learn how to leverage the data a bit more to steer the AI as well. So I think we need to, anyone listening to this in paid media really needs to get up to date with their data, their enhanced conversions, their conversion tracking, because it is non-negotiable at this point for your accounts to have conversion tracking in place, and you're really going to struggle in the next few years without having that knowledge of the data. So I think that's a really big pivot that we're going to have to prepare ourselves for.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people do forget, this tracking and this setup of accounts, but it's like, even having search queries on and
like
that.
feeding audiences into it, and there's so much you can like give it, and it is probably figuring out, like you say, what do you need to give it and steering it. Yeah, that completely makes sense. It's like if you give it all the relevant information, it's gonna perform the best, whereas if you just let it go in blind, it's just gonna it's gonna be horrible. So
yeah, and I think also people really forget, and you kind of alluded to this right at the beginning of the show, is about the ads are one aspect, but they're only driving traffic to a site, and then that has to perform. And people sort of forget that, the ads aren't working, turn them off. Hang on a minute, they're doing their job really nicely. They've got fantastic click-through rates, as you said. What's the problem is the website and this page or where it's going to. And that's another element, that you have this divide between different departments usually within the business. It's your fault, no, it's yours, that kind of thing. Anyway, that leads us on very nicely to my golden nugget question.
Here he goes. So Rob's going to introduce himself with a little drum roll. Does this every time, and then you, as a guest, get to rate him out of 10. Do not pull your punches, because I say it helps him improve. I think the last guest gave him a 3, so he's actually going backwards.
What am I rating? Drum skills or the question?
Oh, the drum skills.
Question.
The drum skills. And if he gets above a 7, he gets to ask about AI. If it's below, he does not. So no pressure, Rob.
The last time I did it, I got really low, and the time before I changed my technique and did really well. So I don't know where I'm coming and going now. But anyway, ready.
Short but sweet. Yeah. What would you rate that?
Oh, a solid 6.5.
No AI question for you, my friend.
Oh no, I've got to change my question now.
I'll allow it. Go on. I'll round you up to a 7.
Well, I'm just going to slightly deviate from a question that I kind of thought of, because I think you've slightly kind of answered that, but I think it's quite relevant now. So, what piece of advice would you give someone who's coming into work on Google Ads now, knowing AI and what it can do, and it can obviously write ads and all these amazing things? So there's always that lure of that there, and they're going to want to go to that. This is, I'm not leading you down to how to answer the question, but the kind of thing is, someone's starting today in Google Ads, they come to your company, never done it before. What one piece of advice would you give them?
Yeah,
Okay.
so I think, kind of as I said earlier, really, I think just really keeping up to date, doing your exams and kind of starting there, and just not being afraid to get in the weeds, really. I think that truly is the best way to learn and to get started. I think I've actually had a new team member join about a month ago, and that's the path I've sent him down as well. I'm like, just do it. Just go in the accounts, figure out what's going on, do some audits, see what kind of metrics you're seeing and what you're thinking. But yeah, the exams is such a huge part of it. I really would say start there if you can, because it does give you a really good foundation to kind of build on, really.
Yeah.
And I think, I was going to say, I'd caveat that, I'd just go to the desk day one, put your book down and say, come back, read that, come back in a week.
Yeah, his tips. But yeah, no, totally agree with like getting hands on, because there's even like sort of little changes, like the sidebar changed not so long ago and things moved around. So imagine getting in front of like the board or a client and they're like, oh, let's just look at your search terms, and they're like, oh, they've moved. Like I can't find them. So I think being hands on, yeah, incredible golden nugget tip, and that probably would be mine as well. I think because yeah, there's definitely bits I need to scrub up on. I'm a generalist marketer, so I don't get as much time to do the PPC stuff as I want to. But getting hands on is definitely the best way, because even if you don't know something, you go in and you're like, where's that gone to, or why can't I find this, or oh, that's not working. It's like you then go off and find that knowledge, like you said. So yeah, you just learn
really so much, don't you? Just being in the weeds. No, that's fantastic. Yeah.
So that's it. You've done it. Well done.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed that. Rob's written stuff down. I've got to go look at these dynamic search headlines now as well. You've taught us both something so amazing, and I know everyone listening will have just taken so much value from that as well. So absolutely, first podcast smashed it out of the park.
Oh, thanks, guys.
But if people want to learn more from you, where can they go? What can they do?
What can I do?
You got some books. Yeah, you got your books. You're writing. LinkedIn.
We'll affiliate link.
Promote yourself.
LinkedIn.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, sweet.
Yeah, I think so. My LinkedIn's really locked down. I'll make it unlocked down before this, so I'll say it.
Sure.
So you can find me on LinkedIn. I have a link tree on there as well with links to my book and articles and things like that too. So I think LinkedIn's your best bet.
A link
tree, and we can pop the link tree
heard.
in the comments of this when we post it next week. So yeah,
I don't even know what that is. A link tree.
Oh well, you're learning everything. Get it written down. It's a cool little tool actually. We should probably have one for ourselves. But anyway, we're deviating. Yeah, that's it. It's been amazing. You go find Sophie's link tree, Rob yourself, click through to these things, buy the books, and yeah, thanks again so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for being such lovely hosts. I appreciate it.
No worries. Fantastic. Thank you very much. I've learnt. There's loads there, and my link tree, which I'm going to Google now. What the heck that is?
Yeah. To everyone else, go check out Sophie. Go check out our other episodes, and leave us a 5-star review for this, please. And we'll see you all on the next one. Bye bye.
Yeah. Bye now.